most of y'all, for a long time, and love to always hear about their stories from time to time. They'd always come in town and visit, and my dad and mom were always very supportive of Brian and Lori. So that's just kind of as far as it went with me up until about March, when my parents weren't able to attend an appreciation weekend, and so we were very fortunate and the benefactors of that. So we went up to Georgia to really get a first row seat about the amazing, miraculous work that is Mercy Ships. So over a Friday night program, Saturday morning program, Saturday evening program with the founder Don Stevens speaking, volunteer surgeons speaking, life-changing testimonies, videos, presentations, being in a room full of grace givers. We walked away from that event just very humbled about the movement of Mercy Ships. And so it left an immediate impact on me, and it left an immediate impact on Jessica, and so much so that on the way home we just had a compelling to want to do something for Mercy Ships that maybe we weren't able to do at that event, and that is to raise awareness from friends and family. And so for about 6 months we've been planning that out with Mercy Ships, talking to family, talking about where to have it, who to have it, who to invite, and I just want to thank all of you for being here. I want to thank the people over Mercy Ships, Jenny and Myrna, for helping us assist in this desire and prayer. And so that's the journey we've been on, and the reason we're here is to let you be on the journey with us, because it's tangible and it's real and it's around the bend, and you'll hear more about what I mean by that here soon. So we're invested more so than we've ever been, and even my daughter has been invested, because we got an annual report for Mercy Ships, just a magazine about financials, and there's some photos in there. And I was going to church one day with Millie, just me and her, and I had the magazine, and I was before church. I was just showing her this magazine about Mercy Ships, and so she's seeing all these amazing photos. And she's like, oh my gosh, look at his knees are bent, and now they're not bent anymore. And isn't that amazing? So it quickly became her favorite book, was Mercy Ships. She had a kind of a first-hand experience about seeing these photos, and now we got a book recently that Mercy Ships sent us, just a great gift book that had more of this in there. So, so I'm invested, our family's invested, and we're ready to really just raise awareness and invite you on this journey with us, and that's why we're here. I'm glad you have taken time out of your schedule to learn and listen. Thank you.
Thanks, Matt. Hi, I'm Jessica Simpson. You don't know me. I would like to echo everything Matthew said. In addition to that book that he's talking about, I don't know the answer to this question, so I'm just going to ask it right now. The devotional daily dose of mercy, can people get that?
I think they have very much.
Oh, are they?
Yes.
Like, are they, you can find it and buy it, right?
I think I can.
Okay.
Because it's awesome, right?
So there's a fantastic daily devotional called Daily Dose of Mercy that gives you a great story. It's written by the founder, Don Stevens, and we open it every morning, and it's pretty awesome. So that was my little plug for that, if they could find it on like Amazon or whatever. But if you want to hear more about
Mercy Ship's website.
Oh, the Mercy Ships website. Okay, you can find it there. Okay, so my job is to introduce Ginny, who I'm talking to because she's the leading expert in the room. And Ginny's going to come up and give you guys a little history. So, Ginny Staley is her name. She is the Regional Development Manager for Mercy Ships. She covers the Southeast U.S., including our area, so she's your girl. She's our girl. Before joining Mercy Ships in 2014, Ginny worked alongside the organization for more than a decade, first as a corporate giving partner and then with other nonprofit organizations. In her current role, Ginny works closely with individuals and families who support Mercy Ships, like us. She enjoys showing people how they are making a positive impact in the world and helping families develop their philanthropic vision and plans for living into a faithful and generous life and legacy. So So I want to introduce you all to Jenny. She's been a great help to us, and we appreciate her very much. Jenny?
Yeah, this is a little bit of a technical challenge. So I am many things, but technically gifted is not one of them. Thank you so much for coming tonight. I'm so happy to have all of you here in this room, and thank you to Matt and Jessica. I took that phone call after Founders Weekend when they were driving home. I don't think we were an hour away from the facility, and they called me, and they just were so filled with spirit and with enthusiasm and just on fire with passion for Mercy Ships. And it was just a really wonderful thing to see, you know, what God will do with that. And so it's great to work with them, and it's been great to get to know them. And David and Sally, you know, I just met them tonight, which is hard to believe because they have been part of Mercy Ships for 20 years. 20 years. And I had looked that number up earlier this week, and David and I talked about it earlier today. And, you know, I think about people like them as those who have laid the foundation for what Mercy Ships is today. And they have sent the Blackburns, they have helped send them to be missionaries on the ship, and I can even begin to tell you how many lives have been impacted by Brian and Rory and their family as they have served on the Mercy Ship, as they have been leaders, as they have touched the lives of patients, volunteers, and they've been organizational leaders. Incredible gift they are to the organization. And it's because of the kindness of David and Sally and so many others who support people who go on the ship that all that difference is made. So thank you for that. So now that I got that out of the way, a little bit of history here. Since 1978, Mercy Ships has been bringing hope and healing to the forgotten poor in developing countries. Following the 2,000-year-old model of Jesus, it's an incarnational model. We do this through hospital ships, and through those hospital ships, staffed by volunteers from around the world, from more than 40 countries. They provide direct medical services focused on surgical and dental care. We provide training for local surgeons and healthcare providers in the countries where we serve. And we try to strengthen the local healthcare system so that after we leave, the country is better able to care for itself and its people. And that's our goal. Since that time, we have delivered more than $1 billion in aid and impacted the lives of more than 2.6 million direct beneficiaries of our services. That's pretty amazing. We'll be celebrating our 40th anniversary in service on October 5th. That's 2 generations. You talk about when David mentioned the generations and the blessings of the generations, and that's one of those. So, we have operated 5 ships over the course of time. At this point, we have 1 ship on the water. That's the Africa Mercy. When she came aboard, we retired smaller ships for lots of reasons, mostly efficiency. And we currently serve in Africa. We turned our sights to serving the people of Africa, primarily on the west coast of Africa in 1990, I think, somewhere in that area, because that's where the greatest need was, the poorest countries in the world, and also because of access. We had access to masses of people that were nearby port cities where we could go in and deliver the kinds of work that we do, the very unique kind of work that we do. There's no other hospital ship that does the kind of work that we do, no other surgical ship. So that's why we serve in Africa. So, one country at a time, we are trying our very best to change this world, but we can't do it alone. So, I'm going to stop talking for this moment and just let the overview video.
Almost 40 years ago, I took my first trip from Lausanne, Switzerland by train to Italy to look at ships. I listed some of the things that I didn't know or that I'd heard. Things like, you can't do that. It's way too expensive. I didn't know where we would find a crew. In fact, I didn't know what I didn't know. I was 32. That's awfully young. Almost 40 years ago, God took a huge risk. I could say that it all started with a hurricane or reading a book about the famous SS Hope. I could say it started with meeting Mother Teresa or with the birth of our special needs son, John Paul. Or I could say it began with my parents' simple way with grace and mercy and dignity with their small town helping hands. I could say all of those things about the very beginning of the idea that became Mercy Ships, and they'd all be true.
Mercy Ships is a unique organisation because it is bringing services to countries that would otherwise never be able to access those services.
The millions of people who either physically or financially do not have access to healthcare are staggering.
We just see people that need help. You realise that they have no way of getting help, and I want them to know that they're loved.
After the rejection and the ridicule hard lives that they've had up until this point, then to have a ward full of nurses and the other ship staff, people just pour out so much love on them. Love does make a difference.
People say to me, well, there's all these millions. How do you think you can change that? And we can change the individuals one life at a time.
Bringing this hospital ship in, it's a state-of-the-art platform. Surgeons, nurses, professionals from all over the world offering this free of charge at the highest standards is unique.
If you talk to any of the government leaders, as I have, they will tell you how beneficial Mercy Ships has been, not only for their people, but also in terms of a lasting impact.
We're working hard here to leave a legacy of improved healthcare.
Mercy Ships is particularly good at providing not just training, but training with an imbued sense of needing to pass on the training.
We can work together and do things together that we could never do by ourselves.
That video a number of times, and I got to tell you, it always makes me smile. It just really does. I know it's hard to see some of those pictures for the first time, but it makes me smile because I know the transformation that's taken place in those lives, and I've seen some of those faces personally, and I know what the difference it makes. So I'm going to turn this over now to one of my colleagues and someone I think you know of, Dr. Andrew Clark, and I'll read you the official bio. Dr. Andrew Clark is a South African native, but was raised primarily in New Zealand. He started supporting Mercy Ships financially in 1993 as a student and completed his medical degree in 1987. In 1991, Dr. Clark came aboard Mercy Ships on the inaugural trip of the Pacific Ruby as a volunteer crew physician and continued to volunteer as a physician on several of the other Mercy Ships, until January of 2000 when he became the Chief Executive Officer for the Caribbean Mercy. And in 2003, he transitioned to the Mercy Ships headquarters in Texas as an integral member of the global management team. Currently, Dr. Clark serves as the Director of Organizational Development at Mercy Ships. He also serves on the board of Mercy Ships New Zealand and Mercy Ships Canada. Now I'm going to give you my version. I met Andrew 4 years ago when I came aboard Mercy Ships and had to go through what we call onboarding, which is a 4 to 6 week course that is done at the global headquarters. And all of our long-term volunteers and our employees have to go through this onboarding process. And the purpose of that is to prepare your heart for the work that you're about to do. Prepare your heart for the mission. not so much to prepare you to do your job. They sort of assume that you know how to do that when you get there, but to prepare your heart. I can't tell you, how the work of Andrew and the management team invested in changing the lives of people who come to serve on the board. That process is transformational. And I got to put my glasses on. Sorry. See, it's dark and it's small. And I know there's some other things I want to say. So Andrew's role really, his vision for preparing people to serve plays a critical role in carrying forth and maintaining Mercy Ship's organizational values across time and geography. When you think about the size and scope of our mission and our organization, that is no small task. And although he no longer works in the medical capacity, I say Andrew's passion for carrying out this work of preparing people's hearts makes him a gifted healer in my book. And he's transformed in my own life. So I'll now turn it over and ask you to welcome Dr. Andrew Clark.
Thank you so much. Well, good evening, everyone. I'm delighted to be here tonight. David and Sally, thank you for your gracious hospitality in this beautiful venue. And thank you, Matt and Jessica, for your advocacy for our organization. Yeah, as you can tell, I'm not from around here. In fact, I'm in Texas right now. And I don't know if some of you know that one of the largest flea markets is just very close to where I live. It's a place called Canton. And I was wandering around one day, and a chap came to me and said, you're not from around these parts, are you? And I said, well, I'm from Bayan. I live in Van, Texas, V-A-N, and of course there's no such thing as a one-syllable word in Texas, so it's Bayan, it's a little bit longer. And I said, been there my life, I'm fixing to be there the rest of it. So he was like, no, I don't think so. So you're probably wondering, I do have a very odd accent. I was born in South Africa, and my name's Andrew Clark in South Africa, and I parked my car on Harvard Yard. And then I went to New Zealand, and you have to change your accent in New Zealand, and I became Andrew Clark, and I parked my car on Harvard Yard. And now I park my car on Harvard Yard, and I'm Andrew Clark. So it's a little bit of a mixture. So what I wanted to do tonight was just to share a little bit about my journey. And actually, Jenny said 1993. It was actually 1983 when I first started with the organization as a financial partner and financial supporter. And so I just thought I would give you a little just a couple of things about my journey with Mercy Ships over the last 35 years. And specifically, I want to talk about two dates that were pivotal for me in terms of really helping to shape how I saw the world and how I saw the organization Mercy Ships and how it could help the world. So these two dates are in 1983 when I first was introduced to Mercy Ships by Don Stevens. I met Don Stevens, and if you ever meet Don Stevens, your life has changed. He's an incredible man. He has an incredible vision. And he loves to recruit people, and he did that just then, and recruited me to become a financial supporter, and I became a check writer for a number of years. And finally, in so on a monthly basis, I was supporting the work of Mercy Ships. And then in 1991, I went on my first trip with Mercy Ships, and that was quite an incredible experience. And I felt that in 1983 that God had really called me to come and work with this organization. There was a time though, and I don't know if you've ever felt like this, where you know that you're supporting a great work, but you wonder, that what I do, the things that I do, the things that I give, does it make any difference? When you consider the incredible and vast sort of statistics out there. The statistics are terrible. If you just think about some of the overwhelming statistics that we have right now, billions of people live in poverty. Billions of people live in poverty. Where we work is in sub-Saharan Africa, and up to 69% of people in sub-Saharan Africa live on less than $2 a day. And you can see that's why it is light blue, because they have the lowest human development index. The human development index kind of measures standard of living. You know, how much access do you have to healthcare? How much access do you have to education, etc., etc., and GDP and a bunch of other things. So, almost 70% of people in Africa live on less than $2 a day. If you look at the statistics of what that means, 1/4 of the world's population have no access to basic healthcare. So for them, in their communities, there is no doctor, there is no nurse, there's no pharmacist, there's no dentist, very low basic education, if anything, and their lives are just existence from day to day. Stunning statistics. And then I sort of thought about the fact that 5 billion people lack access to safe, affordable, and timely surgery. And one of the things that Mercy Ships has been advocating for a long time is that the surgical need in this world is an incredible problem. And recently, through the Lancet and a partnership with Harvard University, they came out with a study, and they came up with this staggering perspective that 5 billion people lack access to safe, affordable, and timely surgery. Now, of course, some of those people live here in the United States. The problem is not safe surgery. I think most surgery is pretty safe. But what about it being affordable? And for some it's not. Bankruptcy is the number one reason for bankruptcy, I believe, in the United States is because of healthcare issues. And sometimes it's not timely. If you live way out in the middle of nowhere in Alaska, say, for instance, you might not be able to get to surgery in time. But the problem with Africa is that it's all three of those things. They don't have timely surgery. Even if they could get to a place that could do surgery, the roads are, the infrastructure is such that it's very difficult to even get to a hospital. And the main hospitals tend to be in the port cities, and these are huge countries. It's not affordable. If you have less than $2 a day, you're not going to be able to afford surgery. There's just no way. And then it's not safe. Either because they don't have the right kind of equipment, or the surgeons do the very, very best that they can, but they just haven't got the kind of training that they need. And because the specialization is just not there, so you kind of become a general doctor and you do everything. And I've worked with some of those people. I remember spending some time in India and working with a physician, and he was the anesthetist. And then once he sort of got the patient to a place where it was okay to operate on, he sort of handed it over to students, and it was me. And then he went round and then he did the operation. And then he did everything else. I mean, so the problem, this is a staggering, absolutely staggering statistic. And then when you look at that statistic, 8.6 million people every year die because they have lack of access to safe, affordable, and timely surgery. And when you think of the world's problems, you might be thinking, well, what about malaria and tropical diseases and HIV and AIDS? Well, malaria and other tropical diseases account for 1 million deaths a year, and HIV, AIDS, and tuberculosis for 2.76 million a year. That's nothing like the 18.6 million that lack access to safe, affordable, and timely surgery. And so that is what Mercy Ships does. And so when I thought about those statistics, and I thought about the money that I was able to give every month to the organization, I wondered, does it make any difference when you consider the incredible need? I have so enjoyed coming back here. I was here in 2000. In fact, in 2001, November 2001, I was the CEO of our former ship, the Caribbean Mercy, and we came into Pensacola and spent a number of weeks here. And the people of Pensacola were incredible and amazing. And one of the things that is just absolutely gorgeous down here is the beaches. And the white sand, it's phenomenal. And I grew up most of my life near a beach, and now I'm in landlocked Texas, and I have about 10 hours to go to a beach, and I'm really, it's not fun for me. But I remember hearing the story of a man who was walking down the beach. And as he was walking down the beach, he thought he saw someone in the distance that was dancing. And so as he got closer, he realized it was a little boy, and what this little boy was doing was he was throwing starfish into the ocean. Some of you may know the story. And as he started looking at around, and he saw these thousands of starfish that were stranded, and he said to the little boy, "What are you doing?" And he said, "Well, I'm throwing these starfish in the ocean." And he said, "Well, why?" He said, "Well, I'm trying to save them." And the man said, "Well, there's thousands on the beach. Yes, I know the tide is going out, but you will never get to all of these starfish. What difference do you think you can possibly make by just throwing a few starfish in the ocean?" And the little boy thought for a moment, and then he bent down, he picked up a starfish and he threw it into the ocean. He looked the man in the eye and he said, "Mister, I made a big difference for that one." And as I thought about that, I thought, yes, that's what it's about. I am making a difference. Yes, the need is huge, but the thing that I can do makes a difference. You heard about Mother Teresa being an influence for Don. In fact, Mother Teresa encouraged Don Stevens to start Mercy Ships. He had a remarkable audience with her a number of years back, and she challenged him, "What are you doing about your dream?" And he said, "Well, I'm not too sure. I've got these ideas." She said, "Put your dream into action." And after that, he went and he wrote a business plan, and Mercy Ships became that part of that. And Mother Teresa said this. She said, "I never look at the masses as my responsibility. I look at the individual because I can only love one person at a time." And then she went on and said, "I pick up one person. And if I didn't pick up one person, I would never have picked up 42,000. And then she finishes by saying, "The whole work is but a drop in the ocean. But if I didn't put that drop in, the ocean would be one drop less." Same thing for you, same thing for your family, same thing in your church. Where you go, just begin. One, one, one. And I realized at that time that yes, my check writing made a difference. It made a difference for the individuals whose lives were being changed because of that. And so that was between the years of 1983, and then in 1991 I received a phone call from someone in New Zealand, and at that stage I was working in a pretty thriving practice. I was in family medicine at the time, and I was very comfortable, and I thought, this is great. This is what I'm going to be doing, and I'll continue supporting the incredible work of Mercy Ships. And the man on the phone challenged me and said, "I'd like you to come for a trip." And I was like, "No, I can't really make it." And actually, what I was doing back then, I was looking after other doctors' practices. So I was what we call a locum tenens, and I had an incredibly busy practice. I was full for months and months and months in advance. And this particular year was very curious because I had a very, very full year. But I had this space of time. It was actually 9 weeks, and I couldn't get any work during those 9 weeks. And I rang up all the physicians, and they said, "My gosh, Andrew, we love to have you here, but we just don't need you right there. And could you come another time?" And as I said, I was absolutely full up until these 9 weeks, and then completely full afterwards for months and months in advance. And I couldn't get any work for this time. And so this man rings me up and he says, "We need a crew physician." And I said, "Well, I'm not too sure that's me. I'm pretty busy." And he said, "Well, here's the deal." And I said to him, "Oh, by the way, how long do you need me for?" And he said, 7 weeks. I said, "No, I can't do 7 weeks." I had forgotten about my schedule, right? He said, "No, I can't do 7 weeks." And he said, "Okay." And I said, "Well, what were the dates?" And he told me the dates. And I looked up at the calendar that I had by phone, and I realized that those 7 weeks were bang smack in the middle of the 9 weeks that I had no work. And I said, "Okay, I've got to go." And so I did. And I sailed with them, and I was the crew physician. And we sailed into the Pacific. We went to this very, very remote island where they hardly get any ships, or in fact, it was so remote they didn't even know we were coming, because we had to wait until we got to 16 miles out so we could use the local radio, just to, the radio to sort of ship-to-shore radio, and we told them we're coming. And when we got on the ship, they were very excited, and they said, "Well, we have this patient for you." So this is my first trip. This is my first patient, and they said, "Here she is," and I went to see her, and she was deathly ill, and she was dying. She was 19 years old, and she'd had an intrauterine death of her baby, and she hadn't passed the baby, and so she was dying from the consequences of this. And I looked around and I thought, and they looked at me and they said, "We're so glad you're here. Thank you for coming. We're so happy that you're going to save her." And then something just sank in my heart, because we had little ships back then. And we would do day-stay surgery on board our ships, but we didn't have hospitals with, well, we had the anastasis, which was one of them, but this particular ship that we had was day-stay surgery. We did eye surgery. And I looked around and I thought, oh my gosh, I can't do anything for this woman. Well, I could do something. I had an IV, so I put up the IV, and I had some intravenous penicillin, and so we gave that, and I had some, for those of you who may be medical, I had some metronidazole, which is another drug that is useful to give when someone has sepsis and is septic. And so I did what I could, but what she needed was an operation, and I couldn't do that. I mean, I couldn't do it for a number of reasons. Number one, I'm a physician, I'm not a surgeon. Number two, we didn't have any anesthetic that we needed for that particular operation. Number three, we didn't have any instruments, because we were a local ship that was just doing local eye surgery. We didn't have the right instruments that we needed for this particular operation. There was no operating room to speak of that we could have used. And even if I had all of that, you know, they have these special books that you don't ever want to know about, but it's like how to do emergency surgery when you don't know how to do emergency surgery. It's that kind of book. They do exist for when you're out in the bush and you want to do bush surgery. And I didn't even have that. And there was absolutely nothing that I could do. And I remember getting so angry with God. And I went under a palm tree and I was like, God, this is my first patient. How could you do this to me? I had such a bad perspective. And I'm kind of moaning and complaining because everyone was looking to me to do something and I couldn't do anything. Well, as I said, I could do something, but that wasn't, in my estimation, that wasn't enough. And so as I was kind of complaining and just feeling very sorry for myself, and I had completely the wrong perspective, this young woman came up behind me and she said, you know what, I think we should go and pray for her. And I was in such a bad mood, in a bad place, and I turned around and I said, Margie, she doesn't need prayer, she needs an operation. And Margie said, oh, no, you're in a bad place right now. We need to pray for her. So I said, fine, you go and pray. And she said, no, you need to come with me. And I said, well, I'll come with you, but I'm not praying. I mean, I was in a stinky mood. And see, the problem was that I was so focused on my own inadequacies and what I couldn't do, I wasn't focused on what others could do and what God could do. And so I said, okay, we'll go pray. And so we did this little prayer and everything, and she decided she wanted to sing over her, and I nearly lost it at that. But I was like, okay, do what you have to do. And I went back, and I'm just thinking, she's going to die on the night. I know she's going to die. I mean, she was at that place. And so we went back to the ship, and the next morning I came back, and she's sitting on the edge of the bed, completely well. And in the middle of the night, she'd had this incredible urge to push, and she managed to deliver her dead baby intact, and she was completely better. And I thought to myself, oh dear, because I had been in such a bad place. I had such a bad mood, and I just went to that place and I said, God, I am so sorry, because I was so focused on what I couldn't do that I failed to see what you could do. And so what I learned out of that was a very, very important lesson. And that is this. God never asks about our ability or our inability. What he asks about is our availability. And I was available, and I gave what I could. I had what was the equivalent of 5 loaves and fishes. I had an IV bag, and I had a few drugs. And I gave that, and I recognized and I realized that 5 loaves and fishes placed into the master's hand can feed the multitudes. And it really, really helped me. Now, most of the time, our skills can help. And notice it says, I said that God doesn't ask for it. It's not that he doesn't care about. Because we're all about excellence. It's part of our core values. And we only take people who have the right credentials. We're not going to allow people to operate who don't have the credentials. We're not going to allow people who can't operate ships to operate ships. They have to have the right certificates. But the attitude that I had to have was, you know what? When you give what you can, then that can be used and it can be multiplied. Because we need each other. And that was a huge, huge, big help for me. I want to just show you some slides from a young woman who, at age 3, fell into a fire. And so here is the young woman, a teenager now, and this is a very scarred foot, and it's a burn contracture, and she has spent her entire life with her foot up like this. And Mercy Ships fixes this kind of stuff. We fix feet. In fact, I think we did not a bad job of fixing those feet. And she can now walk. But here's the thing. This is not about fixing feet. This is about a young woman called Asiatu. And this is Asiatu. And she has no hope. She's in a desperate place. She feels ridiculed. She feels teased. She said to us, I don't have any reason to live. My life is so terrible. I am in a terrible place because of this deformity, and everyone makes fun of me. And everyone teases me. And so, yes, we fixed her feet, but this is also what we did. Because this is Asiatu. And her life is incredibly changed. It's completely and utterly transformed. Not only did we transform her life, and she was so excited. I don't know if you can see, but she's actually got her toenails painted. Can you see that? It's pretty hard to see. Her smile changed, her countenance changed, her family changed. And here's one more thing. Because we're not just about going to do surgeries. We're about training people to do surgeries with us. So we trained a local surgeon to do this kind of surgery. Not only did that, but we trained the anesthetist, the anesthesiologist, to do safe anesthesiology. And we trained nurses to be good scrub nurses. And we trained people to do really good things like make sure that all the instruments are sterilized, which sometimes is a problem in these places because they don't have proper techniques in which to do that. And we show them how you can still sterilize even if you don't have these huge, big, incredible, fancy autoclaves. And not only that, we also train people in the biomedical world as well to train different kinds of people to help to maintain equipment and to make sure that the equipment is safe. And so we do this, and so we not only did we transform her life and the life of her family, but we also transformed the lives of the caregivers. And that's something that we have done increasingly. In fact, one of the cool stories I was just telling Ginny last night, we just went through a big screening process where we were looking for patients. We've arrived in Guinea, and we've been looking for patients to work on. And we were really, really concerned because normally we see lots and lots of cleft lip and palate patients. It's a very common birth defect in Africa, and it doesn't get dealt with. And often we see these people, sometimes we see these people as teenagers or even adults, which is very unusual because a lot of these kids die because they just don't get enough sustenance. And of course, even if they were well, they still can be a problem because infant mortality is huge in Africa. And so we were so concerned, and we looked around and we were like, are you sure? Where are all the cleft lip and palates? And then someone said to us and reminded us, you know what? A number of years ago, I think it was in 2012, I believe, we trained 2 surgeons to do cleft lip and palates. And so we contacted them, and they said, oh yes, we've taken care of cleft lip and palates in this country now. That's why we didn't find any cleft lips and palates. To me, that is what this is all about. In fact, we often say that we long for the day when every nation can take care of its own people. And we long for the day when we do ourselves out of a job, when we're not needed anymore, because people are there in the country and they're trained and they're working really well. And so in order to do that, as you've seen, we are also building a new ship, and this is the globalmercy. It's being built right now in China, in case you're wondering if that's just a nice rendition and where is the ship. This is where the ship is. It's actually, we're getting it, and it's on its way to be delivered. We're not sure when it will be delivered exactly because there have been a few delays, but they're saying hopefully in the first part of 2020. And we're really, really excited about this. And let me just finish by saying, why ships? Because you might be wondering, why do you use ships? I mean, aren't those kind of expensive? And isn't there a better way to deliver healthcare? Well, here's why we use ships. It's really important. A ship is a platform for training and development. It makes a huge difference when you can have this platform. Our new ship will have simulation labs and a number of different, the fact that our operating rooms, or we call them operating theatres, because that's kind of like what the British word is. And there's often a lot of drama that goes on, so that's why it's a theatre. But anyway, that's another story. So the thing is that we have these special operating rooms, and they will have, they're larger than normal, so we can have trainees in them. And some of them will have special viewing areas so that we can get people in and train them. So that's number one, a platform for training and development. Number two, economy of scale. We can bring in a virtual city, as it were, and come in and really help to make a difference in that particular country. Number three, it's a community for our crew, where they can live and work, and as you heard, really great friends of mine and your relatives, Brian and Warwick Blackburn are on board, and I've known them for many years, and Warri is actually leading the Africa Mercy community. She's the managing director on board. So it's a community for our crew. It's a secure platform. We go into places where security is sometimes an issue. And we like to, sometimes we'll go in after there's been civil unrest or whatever, and so we need that security for our ships. Stability, we have a stable platform that we can work out, and of course mobility, because we can take it from place to place. And I just wanted to finish with what I think is one of the most compelling reasons for why we have a ship, and that is that I remember we were operating, and we had a smaller ship that I was the CEO of. And we were in the Philippines, and on board we just did, as I mentioned, we just did eye surgery. But we also had an orthopedic program. And so what we would do is that we would go into the local hospitals and we would work in the local hospitals. And so we were working there, and as we were doing a long operation, and there was some problems with the operation, and we were running over time. And I went out for one reason. I was just observing and kind of floating in between and helping out in the operating room. And I went outside, and there was a woman who was pregnant, and she was right outside the door, and she was in agony. And so I said to the nurse, I said, what's going on here? And she said, well, she needs an emergency cesarean operation. And I said, well, can she not get one? I mean, do you not have a surgeon? She said, no, we've got the surgeon. And so I said, well, what's wrong? And she said, well, we're waiting for you to finish, because you've got our operating room. And I said, no, really? And she said, yes. And I mean, can you imagine how I felt? Because we were in the middle of a very difficult operation. There's no way that we had to hurry it up, obviously, but we still had another hour to go. And I'm thinking, this woman needs an emergency cesarean, and she is waiting because we're taking her operating room. And I thought to myself, this is not right. And I love the fact that when we come in, we do not make any demands on the local infrastructure, because we bring in our own infrastructure and we make all the difference. So I hope that was just a little bit of a taste of what we do, and thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to be here. Just delighted to be here, and I'll pass it back to Ginny. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Andrew. Thank you for coming and for being here with us tonight, for sharing your vision and your passion with us and your history. I'm going to ask David if he would come up and share with you a little bit. He's a man of very few words, but he did agree that he would love hearing his speak. You're most...
Everybody full? Yeah. Need some more key lime pie? Raise your hand. Okay. Background. And my wife always reminds me, Shane and Destin, thank you for the shrimp dinner. Especially, Destin, thank you for attending our bar. It's still open afterwards. Real quick, I'm from Pensacola. My father had an 8th grade education. My mother had an 8th grade education. My father went as far as he could go in the Navy as enlisted man, 30 years. They had 5 children. 3 nurses and 2 lawyers. I don't know how, 2 boys and lawyers. I don't know how that happened. But, so, you've heard the name Brian Blackburn. Brian was my sister, closest to me, son. She died early. She died from the same brain cancer that my father died from. Her age was about 45. My father was about 55. And Brian, I think, was still in high school. And so he graduates from Huntsville, North Alabama College. And we get this notice that he's at the Mercy Ship. So me and Sally want to do everything we can. So we start donating to his, ministry.